Hi, I'm Josh. Today on Make It, I'm going face-to-face with one of my favorite photographers, Ryan Muirhead. He'll tell us how he reverse engineers his photo shoots to embrace vulnerability and capture intimate connections with his subjects. So what's up, Ryan? How you been?
I've been pretty good. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Well, we're really excited to have you on the show. I'm a big fan of your work, so I'm really excited to be able to chat with you and help other people see like how you see the world and how you take the photos that you take, because they're just all stunning.
Awesome. I appreciate that so much. I'm not sure I want people to have to see it how I see it, but whatever they get out of it, I'll be glad.
Well, a lot of this is trying to figure out like, well, how do you like go through your process and creative process? And as you said, we don't all want to see it the way you see it.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious about like, what's your approach?
When I first started out, I was very self-conscious about like, oh, I met so many cool photographers and artists who have all these good ideas of things to do. And I never had an idea for a photo. And I was like, oh, that's just something you have to shoot for years and years. And then you'll get really good at having ideas and executing them. And that never came. And it was kind of like a real breaking point for me, because I was like, I still don't have any ideas for photos. Should I quit doing this? Should I try to pivot into something else? Because clearly I'm lacking something. And just in a little sit down with myself, I was like, well, what are you? And I was like, I'm really observant. I'm really patient. I really think like, oh, this is how I would want to tell this. And it was like, oh, you're just going to have to kind of reverse engineer that then. If you're doing creative work, you're just going to have to create these situations where you've felt the kind of things you wanted to share, and then know that as that's happening, you'll see something you want to share. And I'm still working like that. I don't think I brought a single image, and I don't think I have a single image to share that was an idea for a photo I had. I've never been like that.
Your approach is being, as you said, observant and being available and being ready and being able to say, I'm here and I want to capture what is existing between us.
How I work is a little bit differently than, here's the call time, we have 2 hours, this is how I work through a shoot, we're gonna make this. Mine has all come from, I never know what I'm gonna make, but when I'm on a long road trip with somebody, or when we can just sit down and have a conversation, or when one of us has been through something like emotionally intense and there's a space just to like talk about that or manifest that physically, when I'm in those situations and I have a camera nearby, it occurs to me like, oh, this is how I would want to share that. You know, how you're sitting like this and leaning like this, and how your face looks when you're actually emotionally engaged in an activity. It starts to occur to me like, wow, that's full of like so much emotional and physical presence. Like you're actually communicating something far more than me saying, hey, I want to pose you and I want a little bit of weight on this arm and a little bit of this and kind of look like this. I never have that. But now just right here, I'm like, wow, that'd actually be a beautiful communicative portrait. And it's probably only in the last couple of years that when, you know, like people started buying my work or were asking me to speak about it, I was like, oh, the stupid way that I was embarrassed about doing it is leading to results that people are like responding to. Maybe I can just be more upfront about how I want to work.
Right. That vulnerability that we all feel about like judgment from outside and thinking like we have to operate in a certain way, otherwise the content or the quality of the results isn't there.
Yeah.
Is something that's really hard. How did you get through that? Like what was your process to get through that worry?
I guess a little bit, like I said, was reflecting back that was how I had made some of it and people responded to it. And then a little bit more of it was just like owning it. I mean, I had some really profound experiences, like, I mean, definitely the photographic experience of my whole life was I had a niece who died at 10 days old of heart and brain tumors. And my sister asked me to photograph her life and her funeral and her burial. And it was obviously that thing of like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't know how to do that. Like, what's the answer to like, I don't know how to do that.
And how am I going to be like that person that has to like hold that like responsibility?
But just in talking with my sister and her wanting it was like, no, I love the work you make and I love how you capture things. And just having to be like, well, wow, how I would do that. You know, I only shoot these simple film cameras and I shoot everything really wide and close, and I'd have to stand right next to you and I'd have to be in such a like tense spot to do all this. And, you know, that was the answer. And, you know, it turned into probably the most meaningful work I had made. And after that, it was like, think of the times in your life where you felt connected, where you felt present with this, when you felt like you saw it in a unique and meaningful and personal way, and then just make stuff like that. And you might have to do a little explaining up front of like how you are, but better to do that than try and sell yourself as something you're not.
It's a very brave approach because I think a lot of us in all parts of life, whether or not it's creative or otherwise, we feel like we need to project this air of confidence. And at the end of the day, the real thing that matters, the only thing that actually matters is connecting.
Yeah.
And making sure that you have that connection with your client or with your friends or with whomever. And that's what a lot of us get into creating art for, is to be able to connect with people.
Absolutely. I got into shooting because like I had been through some really hard things and I didn't have a way of processing it and I didn't have a way of letting it out. And I kind of started by accident, but a couple people responded to it. They were like, oh, this feels like that, you know? And I got really into working like that. And I started working with a bunch of models, not out of this specific interest in like fashion or beauty photography or anything, but because it was a group of people that were like, you can take my photo. And I was so scared to like engage with that just having that demographic was such a godsend. But I didn't actually care about like those genres of photography. And as I, you do something and it snowballs. And as I shot more and more and more work like that, I was like, wow, there's a real risk of you like turning into an emotional vampire. Like, I want to see beauty. I want to see loss. I want to feel connection. I want to see heartbreak. I want to see elation. I want to see vulnerability. But I want you to do that. And if I have this camera, I can hide behind it and just take it.
I don't need to be vulnerable at all.
Yeah.
You be vulnerable and I'll be safe.
So I got so self-conscious about that, I took one of my most trusted friends that I'd made the most work with, and we started doing self-portrait nudes together, where these images were me and her, and the camera was just on a tripod with a self-timer. And I was like, wow, I felt so much more scared. I felt so much less confident. I felt like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know if this will come across right. I don't know if this is a good idea. And I was like, yeah, no kidding. What do you think people you're shooting are feeling?
Right. And how's that changing the way that you approach your models or your subjects from in this point now?
To me, it was invaluable. I meet a lot of people who are like, no, I do this and they do this, and I'd be terrible at that. And I'm like, what I want to capture is actual connection, emotion, and meaning. I don't want a bag full of tips and tricks to make it look like I did.
Move your head this way, move your head that way.
Yeah, I want it to feel like it felt to me actually being in these intense emotional circumstances, so that when I go back to, no, I'm just a photographer now, I'm just shooting, I understand, at least to a certain degree more what the subject's feeling. And that's what I want.
Right. I've seen a lot of your stuff recently has moved into some of the longer exposures or doing beyond. And where are you going with it? What's the...
To be honest, that's one of my favorite things to talk about right now, because I'm proud of all the work I've made and put out. It's a journey. I was at this stage. I just wanted to not suck at taking photos, and then I practiced and I got good, and I just wanted to know what the lenses would do, and I just wanted to know when someone was brave enough to show up and work with me that I knew I could deliver something worth their time. And I made a lot of work in that time where it was like trying to make something beautiful, trying to make it, like aesthetically pleasing. Like this, one of my favorite portraits that I'm proud of and that I love. But I do a lot of like interviewing myself because I want to keep going and I want to keep getting better. And I was like, buddy, like, what are you doing with these? And I was like, I'm trying to prove my worth. I'm trying to say, like, I'm good enough for you to spend time with because look how beautiful these are. Right. It'll be worth your time. It'll be worth you knowing me. And in a introspection after going through photographing the death of my niece, photographing the death of my grandmother, losing some friends, I started getting this like, okay, is that the pinnacle? Is that where you want to be? And I was like, no, I want to feel worth it because I care. So I came up with this idea of like, what if I'm shooting film, and what if every shot I take during a shoot is like a 4-second long exposure? What will those look like? And the answer was, I don't know. And I was like, there you go. So what if you did a shoot and all the shots were on this timer and the timer ran for a long time, and at the end of the shoot, you were like, okay, we're done. I don't know if we made a single good picture. So then I started making these like long exposure ones. I'm getting kind of shaky. That's fun. I don't mind being shaky about what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But where at the end of the shots, at the end of the shoot, literally, I didn't know if we had succeeded photographically. And I'm not saying I'll always do that, but it was an important headspace for me to accumulate of, no, be worth it because you're here. Be worth it because you're trying. This is another one of my favorite images. This is an actual double exposure on film. There's not composite work done on this. I took a roll of film and I walked around outside and I shot trees and flowers and stuff, and I rewound it just enough and left the tip out. And then I put it in an underwater camera and jumped in the pool and shot those. And I literally had no, it was hours worth of effort. And at the end of that, I was like, I have no idea.
Which is basically the
worked.
antithesis of digital photography, right? So,
I'm not a film versus digital guy, and I'm not a hater on anyone's process. My favorite current contemporary photographer shoots 100% digital, and I love her work and wouldn't want to change it. But for me, it was like, why are you doing this? And it was like, because I'm scared and I want to connect and I don't know how. And when I was on digital, it was like, here's all your lenses, here's all your this, here's all your menu options, here's all your screen. And for me, a screen was like the worst thing imaginable, to have to like physically dwell on it. Mm-hmm. And I was shooting it and I was like, I got to get a camera without a screen. And someone was like, well, like an old film camera. And I was like, perfect, I shoot film now. Yeah. To just try and stay here and not here, right. Even when it's like really scary, really hard.
One of the things that you were talking about, though, is like your focus on minimizing, getting out of the way of the tools, focusing on that connection.
Yeah, along those lines, I think a kind of profound lesson for me was like, why do you need your camera out if you're not ready to make the thing you want to say? Mm-hmm. And that goes back to that like not wanting to be an emotional vampire thing, not wanting to be a like, man, I want to see that emotion in your face. I want to see like that connection. I want to see that longing. I want to see that confusion. I want to see that hope. Go. Yeah. It's like, I want to see you. And this is one where that happened like really recently, I guess. It's this portrait of my new friend, Raluca. We hadn't met before and it was the first time. And it's like, we followed each other's work and like, I think you're a great model and you like my work and all that. And then you get there and immediately have this like thing physically between you. And I showed up and we took a few snaps and, it's hard not to like fall into my like, I know how to shoot good and you know how to make yourself look good. Let's do that. And I try to have it ready, because I want to shoot fast when it happens, but like get it ready, see what I'm, figure out what I'm going to meter it out, what kind of film I want for this experience, and then put it away. And you're just like spent time talking and we stayed up late with a group of friends and eventually it was like 2 a.m. and she was just lying on the floor, just like playing with her fingers. And there was this subtle reflection. And I was like, that's it. I'm like I said, I'm not so much an ideas guy for photo, but I'm really observant. I was like, oh my gosh, hardwood floor, lamps, all the lights gone, just strumming your fingers against the floor. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. But I kind of just got down on the floor to like, not be like, oh good, I'm going to steal this moment. But like, I'm so drawn to what's happening. And I just laid there and got to see it. And I figured out the shot in my head. And then it was, in a moment where it was the thing for me, I was like, oh, please don't move. Just right there, just kind of hold the space.
And how did you get to that point of like realizing that was the right thing to do?
For me, it was like, if you'll humor me. Mm-hmm. For me, I had a couple of friends and classes and like mindfulness things that I went to where we sat like really physically close, like closer than you normally sit to someone. And they said like, hold this space without talking. And we sat like really close and really like in each other's physical and emotional space just for 5 minutes. And by the end of doing that, like half the people in the exercise were crying. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what just happened there? Mm-hmm. For 5 years, I wanted to get better at telling emotional stories with my photographs. And I learned posing and tips and tricks and presets and what lenses I need and why you have to shoot on an 85 and not a 35 because those are bad portraits and on and on and on. And I still wasn't feeling what I felt from my work. And in sitting silently across from a friend or a stranger for 5 minutes, I was like, holy crap. Like if I just had the opportunity to just snap this on whatever lens, like how real, how intense this connection is better than all the work I've been doing. And I had this moment of like, you've been approaching it completely wrong.
Mm. Well, it's also getting to the question of like, well, for whom and for what are you shooting for? Yeah. Are you shooting it for photographers to say like, oh, wow, great job with that circle of confusion there? Or is your job to say like, I conveyed that emotion to people that wanted to be receptive of that emotion?
Yeah, I'm shooting for me and the people I shoot. And that's it. I don't do paid work. I don't accept commissions. I don't accept jobs. Yeah, everything I do is just for me and the people I'm shooting. So that, but that's still hard to commit to. You get into this like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. How do people do it? How does this go well? How will people follow this page? And it's a constant back and forth to get back to that space.
One of the techniques that you recommend to people to go out there and to help them move towards creating a more impactful, emotionally connecting capture. And I would love if you could share with us.
Yeah. The one exercise for me would be like, okay, take one camera and one lens and whatever it is, and you have 10 minutes, go take a photo. And, they go out and worry about this. I know I'm going to have to show this to people, make sure I have the right lens, do a couple different poses, change this up, one color, one black and white. Okay, I won't embarrass myself when I come back now. And they come back and I say, you have it? Pull it up, delete it right now, delete it, format the card, get rid of it. Go do it again. Go repeat that exercise of like, oh, okay, our first effort's never good enough. I'll be even more impressive this time. I'll free my mind and try something wacky. And like, they come back, have the image, and I say, delete it. We're not sharing them, delete it. And then on the third time, be like, all right, you have 5 minutes again with the person you're with. Go do it again. No cameras. And just spending that time with someone, sharing whatever's going on when I want to take a picture and now I don't have a camera, like what's going on with your head, spending that time, and then like on a fourth time, be like, all right, go take a photo.
Dude, thank you so much for coming by. Thank you for sharing your photos. Thank you for sharing your approach. You're very inspiring to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people will be inspired by your just focus on the connection and the emotion that you go, and it's evident in all of your work. And I just want to say that as already been a fan, I'm an even bigger fan of having spent the time talking to you.
That's so kind. I really appreciate it.
So thank you again. And thank you everybody out there for joining us on Make It, Photography Show, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.